presiding officers of the National Assembly, led by former Senate President Senator Ken Nnamani, are in the presidential villa Abuja to meet President Bola Tinubu. Despite their party differences, the former lawmakers are here to show solidarity in the face of Nigeria's daunting challenges.
We believe that with your experience, you are able to face the difficulties and surmount them. What gives us more hope is the courage with which you handle the issue of local government autonomy, and in the national interest that we wish to pledge our support as we work tirelessly to restore national security.
President Tinubu is appreciative of their support as he emphasizes the need for all hands to be on deck.
Yes, there's hardship, but how did we get here? What did we do when we had very high production? We neglected our communities. We neglected the goose that lays the golden egg. We forget to even give them common decent standard of living. We forget to educate our children.
He assures of his government's commitment to transforming Nigeria.
I can assure you, I didn't come to look for money and exploit the situation. I came to work. We will retool and rebuild the Nigerian economy, I assure you, with your cooperation.
The president also calls for more patience from Nigerians, assuring that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. From the presidential villa, Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
All right, so to talk about that and more, we've got Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara here with us, the former Speaker of the House of Representatives. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Morning, Chamberlain.
Well, that particular visit, yes, the forum of past principal presiding officers of National Assembly. Many didn't know that they had that kind of forum, that kind of group together. But usually, what actually is the significance of those kinds of visits?
Well, Chamberlain, I will tell you that some of us decided that democracy guarantees actually nothing. And then as people who, know where the proverbial dead bodies are buried, we decided that we can't just sit out there and do nothing about it. Some of us have been in the room where decisions were made before. And then we've seen the challenges as acknowledged by Mr. President in this country. We've seen the end bad government protests. And we decided that, look, we have to come together and invest in harnessing these experiences that we've built over time. And if it is not enough, even get consultants so that we can generate policy options in order to bring lasting solutions to the problems that we are grappling with in this country. And so that was why we formed this forum.
Oh, so it's a newly formed forum?
Yeah, it's a newly formed forum of, I think, with 27 members of that forum. We're not many. We're 27. And then 4 are already serving in the government. So that leaves us at 23 for now.
Okay.
And then there's an overwhelming response. You see, the problem with these countries is that people want to talk about problems, and they want to leave Nigeria because of problems, as if these problems do not exist in other climes. But nobody is talking about solutions. Even among the elites, when you sit with them, everybody is talking about the problems. And we have elevated these problems to mountains. And we're beginning to see ourselves at ants at the foot this thing of these mountains, but nobody's talking about solutions. And you can take this out among your colleagues as well when you are discussing Nigeria's problems. Just ask them, what are the solutions? What do we do? That is when they will come short. You see, the situation is that, like I have said, our democracy guarantees nothing. It only gives us the liberty and the tools of democracy which we can embrace to build the kind of society that works for all.
Well, much as I get your point, but we also need to situate the fact that in terms of talking about solutions,
Yes.
those officers, I mean, the president and several other presidents, even former lawmakers themselves, they were all elected. And before that, they promised heaven and earth. They were the ones who will always say, we will do this, we will do that. So they were elected based on their promises to provide solutions. So to a large extent, wouldn't it be fair for people to say, look, they should be looking themselves in the mirror if people are talking about, because they have no reason to be talking about the problems after they have promised the people that we will solve it. And most times, they leave us worse off than we were before.
Well, I think I totally agree with you. And it is said that the difference between a statesman and a politician is turning promises into action. And I totally agree with you that when it comes to campaigning, candidates do overpromise. But when it comes to just sitting down and addressing some of these nagging issues, then they come short of it. You see, the point is that you cannot operate outside the system. There's a system in this country. And sometimes when candidates who have not been into the positions that are campaigning for, when they get there, they realize that maybe the kind of resources they thought are available for them to provide these things are not there. You see, and it has also to do with the leadership recruitment process, which, we've been talking about. Leadership, unfortunately for us, is something that is not taught in schools. Our schools, the universities, the secondary school, were all built so that they can generate the workforce for the colonial government. So they didn't bother imparting this knowledge about leadership to our people. You see, the truth is that you can never lead, I said this here, lead people to a place where you have not been. And as a leader, you only reproduce who you are. So in most cases, look at the candidates. How do they even get the tickets, for instance? What criteria? Are there any manifest criteria the political parties generate to say, okay, the candidates we're going to field into these positions must be able to meet these requirements? Those things are absent. In most cases, maybe if you are in the good books or whoever is calling the shots in the party, be it the president, be it the governor, be it the chairman of a local government, or whoever, a godfather in the political party, you get this ticket. So you don't even understand what you are promising, let alone when you get into that office, you scramble yourself. But to fulfill them.
Do you think that they really have the ground to complain, some of the politicians who are elected? Because most times they always want, quote unquote, yes men. Well, maybe they say those who are loyal, because loyalty, they say, is key. And in getting people who are loyal to them, they end up getting yes men. Men who cannot provide certain solutions and tell them the stark truth of the reality in terms of what is going on. Even though before they contested the election, many of them came from societies that they had all the complaints. Then when they get in there, they tell the man only what he wants to hear and not what the real situation is because of the vagaries of power. They get lost in all of those. So they themselves, how easy or difficult is it for the people then to make that change when this keeps happening?
Well, what you have said is actually, sadly, the situation in this country. When people talk about loyalty, then the question is loyalty to what? In other climes, they're talking about your loyalty to the Constitution, your loyalty to the convictions of a leader or to the visions of a leader. But in this climb, you don't even know what the priorities of the leader are. You don't even know what his vision are. You don't even know what his convictions are. You need, for us to be true leaders, you cannot influence people without character. Character defines who you are. Character, in fact, there are people who might just be seated here and you know that this is what they will tolerate and they will not tolerate. And for some of these leaders who demand loyalty, it's loyalty to themselves. It's not loyalty to the country, loyalty to the constitution, or loyalty to a defined agenda or vision that they have set to implement. Ask most of these leaders. Ask them. Thankfully, some of them come here, be they governors or chairman of local government. Tell them, what are the things that you think you will build your legacies upon? What lasting legacies will you build in your local government or state? And how will you get there? How will you achieve this? You will see that most of them will come short. Some are running for offices just because all is available, I can grab it. It's only when they get into that office and then they begin to think, what can I do? So this type of leadership recruitment process that based on loyalty to self, not loyalty to an agenda, not loyalty to the constitution, will not help us. So deliberately, God bless it, we should have a leader. They should be able to sit down and say, no, we have to discard this model that has not worked for this country. Let's evolve another measure of leadership's selection criteria that will be based on merit, will be based on competence, will be based on capacity to deliver. The point is that if you're demanding just loyalty to yourself, not loyalty to the agenda, what if you're no longer in the office? What happened?
I suspect Ayo might want to talk about local governments and role of state governors and states. But before he does that, let me ask you, I mean, the president did also say, well, he knows there's hardship.
Yes.
And how did we get here?
He said there's anger, hunger and anger. He knows.
Hunger and anger. Yes. I mean, it's good for them to see that yes. Actually is out there on the street. Yes. But when he came up, when he came that day, when he announced that subsidy was gone, there are several people who were not exactly, I mean, after they saw what eventually played out, they thought he had thought everything through, because he made a lot of campaign promises about that. He spoke about, I mean, they've talked about all of this for a long time. The protests they had in Lagos about subsidy. So you would have thought that everyone who spoke about it, politicians, if they get into office, they have a master stroke. But when he announced subsidy was gone, many then thought, okay, let's see the policies thereafter. And now, some of the actions here appear to be knee-jerk reaction to what's going on. And so you then ask yourself, wait a minute, does it then mean that they didn't quite get the grasp of what the situation was before they then got into office? Because right now, you look at the exchange rate going south. You look at the purchasing power parity of Nigerians, challenging. You look at inflation, challenging. You look at investments here, tough. Jobs, people are losing jobs. Unemployment. So yes, he keeps saying, of course it's good to be optimistic, but the stark reality is, this is not what people expected of this government.
Yeah, well, in addressing this, Chamberlain, let me say that I will speak for myself, not for the forum. I'm here to talk about the activities of our forum. Mm-hmm. So these ones are my personal opinion, whatever I'm going to say, because we haven't met, so we have not generated consensus to address some of these issues that you have raised, but they're quite valid points. Mm-hmm. And then we must accept, whether we like it or not, except we're disingenuous, to say that the removal of subsidy itself, whether the president did say that subsidy was gone or that he was removing subsidy, we all know that subsidy had been removed before he was elected.
But it was,
you understand?
It was suspended.
It wasn't suspended.
No, the president suspended it at the time.
I'm coming. It wasn't in any budget. You know, the budget is the law, and it's backed by the constitution. So you cannot pass, you know, if there's no provision in the budget, then how do you pay? It's illegal for the executive to appropriate money. They can only appropriate money in consequence of an express legislative authorization, which is the budget. And in this case, there was no provision in the budget. So anybody who told you that he has suspended, how did he suspend it? Was there an amendment in the budget that provided for subsidy?
They told us that there was.
I'm not aware of that, but I was a member of that assembly. And these are subject to disputation, so the things that whoever is alleging should be able to prove to bring it out. There was no provision of subsidy in that budget. I'm not aware of any amendment that took place to provide money for the payment of subsidies, period. So the truth is that he was not the one, whether you like it or not, that is the truth. He wasn't the one that removed subsidies, but he did make that pronouncement. So, but like you rightly say, whatever it is, whatever the outcomes are, I believe he has acknowledged three things when we visited him. The fact that there's hunger and anger in the land. He talks about strengthening the value of the naira, and then he talked about insecurity. I had him. I can even quote the words that he used, both in the open discussion and in the private discussion that we had with him. And we call it executive session in the culture of the National Assembly. He acknowledged this fact and promised that he was doing something about it. So for me, you know, accepting responsibility for something, even if you are not the cause, is the beginning to finding a lasting solution to that challenge. So for me, it's good that the president has accepted the fact, whether he calls it or not, and then he has said that he's applying himself, accepting that responsibility and applying himself to provide a solution. But you see, as a farmer, I know so many things. There are gestation period for everything. You understand? The problem with the prodigal son wasn't that he got what he was not entitled to, but he got it too early. So when my cows, for instance, are pregnant, I expect them to calve at 9 months. If they deliver before that time, I know that there will be a problem. So there's gestation period for everything. And like he has said, we should talk to people about patience. Let's continue to talk to people and hope that something will truly come out.
Well, okay, let me bring it out, because I know that you spoke about the local government, and in terms of that talk, it's all been easy talking to a lot of people to ensure that they keep calm, because on a daily basis, if they can't feed, if they can't move around and do the things they have to do, and if they can't see the big picture, it will be challenging for a lot of them. Let's bring in Ayo. Go ahead, please.
Well, thank you, Chimele. Actually, from his last response alone, or Honorable, from your last response alone, I have 5 questions. But let me start with the issue that Chamberlain raised, which actually is where you know the development starts, bottom up as opposed to top down. So to the issue that Chamberlain has raised repeatedly, and it's something that I am personally raised from time to time, because that's where development starts. This whole local government thing, one of the issues that's been raised about it, first of all, is the taking action on it. What are the difficulties for you? I thought that the Constitution was written in English, and that it was nursery school English enough for anyone to know that this is what the Constitution says. Money comes from the Federation account into a particular purse for brother and the younger one to spend. But now it will seem like the brother now decides, and it's clear what the Constitution says. This is the percentage that goes to the junior brother or younger brother or younger brothers. This is the one that comes to the eldest brother. But in this case, it will seem like the eldest brother, in this case the states, are saying, you know what, I'm going to help you spend the money you want to spend. That's the way it sounds to a number of people. What's the problem with taking action on that?
Well, I guess there's no problem, as it were. And with the decision of the Supreme Court, I think the course is clear. I've been a leading campaigner for local government autonomy in this country. When I was Speaker, we had forums, support forums. I had engagement with state assembly speakers. For me, you know, I believe is that if we're able to free the local government as the third tier of the federating units in this country, one of the basic achievements that we have, which is pedestrian, is to attract quality leadership at the local level that will process these funds They'll be made available to the local government. You can imagine a local government that is drawing from the federation account about $1 billion in a month. You will have PhD holders running to be chairman of those local governments, even councillors. You will have professors, and even more, running to provide leadership at that level. So in regards to the Constitution, well, I'm a lawyer. I've had that argument. The Constitution is written in simple English, and it has provided for joint accounts. The states are saying no. It's the judgment of the Supreme Court is in breach of the Constitution in that it mandated the federal government to pay that money into joint accounts. But you see, beyond that, I believe in expanding the provision of the Constitution, because in the making of the Constitution, he said it is said that what is not expressly excluded is included. Now, you look at the intention of the framers of this Constitution. It was that the money should get to this third tier of our federating unit. But the joint account model has been operated in such a way that it hinders the money from getting to the third tier of government. So for me, it was good for that the Supreme Court was inventive, and they have given clearance to the federal government to pay local government funds directly into accounts nominated by this local government. So I don't see any hindrance, no inhibition whatsoever.
Well, still on that,
Yes.
talking about the subnationals now, and I'm glad that you talked about, visiting the president and having conversations with him and all. Even from the previous administration, one thing that the president at the time said was that, I think it was in 2019 or 2018, 2019, he said that in partnership with the states, the federal government can reduce the poverty numbers by 100 million. Over the next 4 or 5 years, I'm not sure that the government at the time was able to do up to 50 million. But the operative clause there is in partnership with the states. So talking about the collaboration between the federal government and the states, how do you see that? In the light of, first of all, agriculture, because the federal government doesn't have land per se, it's in the states. Talk about solid minerals. The land belongs to the state government. The minerals under the land belongs to the federal government. There are those who will wonder exactly what's happening right here. So without the federal state government's collaboration, there will be some difficulty, don't you think? What are the hindrances that is not making that federal state government collaboration work, so that the federal government policies that you are also talking about here now, the benefits of it can get to the people?
I understand what you're talking about, but you should know that that statement was aspirational. In as much as the president doesn't have the power to impose any decision on the state government. So when you are talking about partnership, you agree that there will be some level of consensus at some point. But if you talk to the governors and then it's not their priority, like I said before, some of them, their priority is building flyovers in state capitals that there are no, hold-ups, even for 3 seconds. Then you now wonder. But you see, the Constitution has provided autonomy for most of these states. If they are willing to come to the table and collaborate with the federal government, I believe that a lot can be achieved. And then to correct one thing, although states own land, but I know that the Land Use Act vests virtually every mineralized land where minerals are found in the federal government. But synergy is important. Building consensus is important. After all, democracy is about consensus, compromise, and then action. But it always boils down to the level of the state governors. If they are willing, they can develop policies, even hire consultants who will advise them as to the best way of going forward, and then be able to put that thing on the table of Mr. President. The whole thing about this democracy is about what we demand and what we don't. And I believe that if they are able to do that, they will be able to come to a solution to say that, okay, this is what we want, this is what we demand in the interest of our people who are suffering. Investment in agriculture alone, if we leave all those flyovers that they're building and we invest in agriculture, we can employ virtually every unemployable youth in this country. I participate in agriculture, not talking in abstract terms, sorry. If you have ventures such as my own, employing 60 to 100 to 200 people, and you have 1 million such ventures across Nigeria, unemployment is solved. And in some cases, when you're dealing with agriculture, you don't even need skills. Seriously. So even the untrained, the unskilled, those that have not gone to the school, like in the north we have the Almajiri crisis, they will all be accommodated. But the point is that priorities are not right. The investments in the people itself is where the problem is. So there are times when there is a clash between infrastructure and the survival of the people. I think if you are weighting it with the milk of human kindness, you can say infrastructure should give way to consideration that will uplift this living standard of our people. But as it is, we have policy mismatch, and then issue of generating the priorities that will help our people are lacking.
Raising the question of vision, when you say that we have policy mismatch and all, it raises the question of vision, right, Honorable? I think Chamberlain you are the one who kind of mentioned it the other time. We need to know where we are going. So if we have 36 states and we have a federal government, we're essentially talking about Nigeria. So how do we harmonize if we do not collaborate? So where is Nigeria going? What's the Nigerian vision in your own opinion? Do you think we have one that every state, including the Federal Capital Territory, will align with and say, this is the direction and this is my part in this vision that we have? Lagos will key in, Borno will key in, Sokoto will key in. What would you say right now? Would you say we have a national vision we are all chasing, irrespective of who is in government?
Well, the truth is that we don't lack visions. If you remember in the past, we had even hired men to come and see vision for us. It was called Vision 2020. The problem with Nigeria is that it's not lack of vision, as it were. Our major challenge is to generate the discipline to stay on the mission. We have so many development policy documents that are out there. But the challenge is, do we have the discipline to stay on track until those visions are realized? And the answer is no. Even at the level of the state, when policies are formulated, a particular governor has now said, okay, this is the direction I'm taking the state to. And then a new governor comes and says, no, we don't want to do anything relating to whatever programs that were initiated by my predecessor, because people will say, I'm merely doing his own, let me do my own thing. So that is where the problem is. At the national level, all these documents are there. If you cross-check on agriculture, you will see policy documents on livestock. I'm happy Jega submitted one recently, you have seen it. So in almost all diversification of economy, ease of doing business, whatever, all these documents are there. But the problem has been getting people onto the table and say, okay, let's stay, on track until we achieve this vision. So we lack the discipline to pursue the visions that we have drawn, to pursue some of these policies that they are on paper until we crystallize them to reality. So that's where the challenge is. But like I said, for the governors, the president is not like a monitor. He doesn't have those kind of powers. Okay. You can only talk to them. You can only try to persuade them. But if they are unwilling to come to the table, then there's nothing you can do about it.
Even though they sit at the table for the National Economic Council meetings and all. Anyway, that's one thing. But there is
Well, if I say, okay, for instance, the president says my priority is to develop agriculture, and then the governor says, no, I want to do flyovers. So how do you reconcile that? You don't have the constitutional power to rein him in. So everything has to do with persuasion. But if they can collaborate more, it will be better for this country. Because if we have policy directions that brings the federal government and the state together, it will be better for our people. But right now, that is not the case.
Well, one of the issues that have been raised over time, right, Honorable, is that of the cost of governance and the lack of accountability. So you may want to speak to those two before I hand it back to Chamberlain with you right there. So in the clamor for a new constitution, there are those who have considered, who are putting forward the idea of a unicameral legislature. What's your take on that? How do you see that working for us, both at the federal and state levels? There are those who would always reference the First Republic, that we had a parliamentary system of government and all of that. What's your take on a unicameral legislature to cut the cost of governance?
Well, let me say one thing, which I think I've said it severally, that democracy everywhere is expensive. It doesn't matter whether it's in Nigeria, in the US, in Europe, wherever it is, people are talking about cost of governance. And I'm happy we are having this conversation in this country. But you know, the Chinese have a proverb that says, cheap things, no good, good things, no cheap. And the Igbos have perfected that proverb in Nigeria by saying that better soup, na money kill 'em. So as far as I'm concerned, if the consensus is that we should move to a unicameral legislature in Nigeria and it will work for us, why not? But there will be consequences attached to that. Because you may want to investigate, why did we discard the system in the first place? And then what will be those consequences that will be generated if we move to a unicameral legislature? People talk about the cost of running National Assembly, for instance. And I've said this thing. Even at the National Assembly, I litigated this. And I will repeat it here. I said, when I was Speaker, the total humongous running cost you're talking about that was given to me was 25 million naira. And I told my accountant monthly, I told my accountant then, look, this money is not mine. Open an account somewhere and put it there. And then I asked them to ask him, because he's still in the service, whether there was any point in time that this money lasted 3 days, this 25 million that they were paying. So the problem is that everybody expects you as a politician, as a leader, as a member of parliament to meet their needs. They're sending kids to school, even abroad, they're coming to ask you for it. But if we can generate the consensus that, look, stop taking these personal problems to your representatives, deal with it. We're fond of comparing Nigerian legislators with what obtains elsewhere, especially in the developed world. Where you see them absence of even company makes them to go to work with dogs. But go to a legislator's house, either in the village or here in Abuja, and see the number of people. So I believe that from the perspective of members, I'm no longer a member of the National Assembly, but I've been there, you know, and I know the situation. If we can cut the demand on some of these government officials by 90%, I assure you that there are so many people there who are willing to even serve for free, FOC, free of charge. But the situation is that you can't just put a lot of burden on my head and you knock down my leg, which I'm supposed to stand on in order to carry the burden.
You know, that's why many people actually think or say also that politicians are the problems of this country. They have several reasons. Number one is that, look, during elections, you go to vote, they won't allow you to vote peacefully, they'll offer you money. They will do all of those things. So when they lead with the money, and then they see them drive very latest of the cars, they don't publish how much they earn, and then you hear the security vote that some of the governors take. Of course, the people will say, look, and then you see the cases that some of them have with EFCC, the humongous amount of money they accused to have stolen while in office. Oh, we'll see all of that and not say, look, these guys are just stealing all our money. That's why they keep heaping these demands on them, maybe.
Well, so it boils down to the same thing we're talking about here. All I'm saying is that if you are able to cut down these demands that comes to them, there are some that are willing to serve for free. You get quite a number of people, government officials, who might be willing to serve for free. But as it is, even that money you're talking about is not enough to get you re-elected into any government position in this country. So the situation is, if you do a unicameral legislature, there's the possibility of members sitting down, since they have the powers, you know, to sack the executive. They may just sit down and plan a democratic coup there. So balancing these legislative powers is very, very important. If you look at the history of democracy itself, especially the one practiced in the US, and you go to the Federalist documents that we formed the basis of the discussion that produced the US Constitution, you will see the clear argument there in favor of separating these legislative powers into two compartmentalized departments. You understand? So that this serves as a check on this. But if we feel that having unicameral legislature will reduce the cost of government, so be it. But I wonder, out of the entire money appropriated for governance in Nigeria, how much goes to the National Assembly that you think you will save? Well, by merging the two houses together. That's a discussion we should take up as well. How much will you save if you're able to do that?
I think
Let's have that discussion.
We'll crunch those numbers maybe next time out, and then we'll have that conversation, including the largesse they get, the estacos they get, the allowances they get, the basics. So all of those things, if they'll come clean with how much they actually earn. Many of them are usually, they don't want to talk about it. But we'll see what we can do with that. But just before we go, so what is next for you now politically?
For me as an individual, or for the forum that I represent here?
For you as an individual.
Well, I think right now is to support this country, to provide the kind of leadership that meets with the aspiration of our people. And you see, to help in passing this message, although it might be a very difficult message to pass, that we cannot survive as a country when majority of our people are addicted to rage. And this rage is misdirected at a government they think is big enough to solve all their problems. It's a difficult message to pass. But like I said, look, nothing works. Even democracy itself does not work. You have to make it to work. As a farmer, I go to my farm, I know that I have to fight against weed. And the degree of the success of my fight against weed determines the quality of the harvest I'm going to get. So let's look at what is it that we're prepared to do in order to succeed. But time will come. Very soon campaigns will open. People will start talking about their aspiration. Then I might come and say, okay, I may want to run for this office if I like. I'm a Nigerian. I have every right to contest even for the presidency. So I might say I want to run for Senate, I want to run for House of Representatives again, run for the presidency, or not even do anything altogether but support those who are running. But for now, I think because of the problems we are in, there has to be some kind of elite consensus as to the way forward out of the present quagmire. And that is what I'm supremely devoted to, not talking about any political office.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on, Honorable Yakubu Dogara, former Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Thank you for having me.